Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. How can a joke at work destroy a marriage and a life? What happens when the person you thought was weak quietly gathers evidence and turns the law against you? I didn't know the answer until the divorce papers arrived at my desk and my entire world fell apart. The office break room smelled like burnt coffee and someone's leftover fish lunch. I leaned against the microwave, watching Shane Dobell fix the printer for the third time this week. His sleeves were rolled up, showing off those forearms that had been the subject of more than a few whispered conversations among the women in our department. "God, Shane, you're so good with your hands," I said, loud enough for the other 3 people in the room to hear. Tamsin Hall, my best friend since college, snorted into her yogurt. "I wish my husband was half as capable." Shane looked up from the printer, that crooked smile spreading across his face. "Just takes practice, Persis. Some guys never learn the right technique." The innuendo hung in the air like cheap perfume. I felt that familiar rush of being the center of attention, the one who could make everyone laugh, who could push boundaries just enough to be interesting without crossing any real lines. "Elliot's more of a gentle touch kind of guy," I continued, making air quotes. "Very predictable, very safe, very boring." Tamsin was practically choking on her lunch now. Even Marcus, from accounting, cracked a smile, though I caught him glancing toward the door nervously. "Nothing wrong with boring," Shane said, but his eyes were dancing. "Though I've always believed in being thorough in my work." I was about to respond with something even more suggestive when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, familiar footsteps that made my stomach drop just slightly. Elliot appeared in the doorway, holding a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite flowers, though I couldn't remember the last time I'd mentioned that to him. His brown hair was slightly mussed from the October wind, and he had that hopeful expression he always wore when he was trying to surprise me. "Hey, honey," he said softly, "thought I'd bring you lunch and—" He stopped mid-sentence, taking in the scene. Shane still crouched by the printer, me leaning against the counter, in what I suddenly realized was a rather suggestive pose, Tamsin wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "What's so funny?" Elliot asked, and I could hear something different in his voice. Something careful. "Oh, just work stuff," I said quickly, straightening up. Shane was fixing the printer again. You know how it is. But Elliot's eyes weren't on me. They were on Shane, who had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable for the first time since I'd known him. Then Elliot's gaze moved to Tamsin, who was suddenly very interested in her yogurt container. "Right," Elliot said finally. "Work stuff." He handed me the flowers, and I noticed his hands were trembling slightly. "I brought sandwiches from that place you like. They're in your office." "That's sweet," I said, but even I could hear how dismissive I sounded. "You didn't have to do that." "I know I didn't have to." His voice was quiet, controlled. "I wanted to." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Marcus mumbled something about getting back to work and practically fled the room. Shane stood up, brushing dust off his knees. "Well, printer's working again," he announced. "Should be good for another few days at least." As he passed Elliot in the doorway, I saw something pass between them. Not words, just a look. Shane's was apologetic, almost guilty. Elliot's was unreadable. "Thanks for lunch," I told Elliot, kissing his cheek quickly. "I'll see you at home, okay?" He nodded but didn't smile. "Yeah, see you at home." After he left, Tamsin immediately pounced. "Girl, you are playing with fire. Did you see his face?" "What about his face?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. "He looked like someone had kicked his puppy. A really sad, confused puppy." I waved her off. "Elliot's fine. He's just sensitive. He takes everything too seriously." But as I walked back to my office, I found myself thinking about that look in his eyes. Not hurt exactly. Something deeper. something that made me feel oddly unsettled. The sandwiches were on my desk, carefully wrapped, with a little note. "Hope your afternoon is better than your morning. Love, E." I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. How could he possibly know if my morning had been bad or good? He hadn't even been here. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but when I opened it, I recognized Elliot's careful typing style. "New phone. Old one was acting up. Hope you liked the flowers." I stared at the message for a long moment. Elliot had had the same phone for 3 years. He wasn't the type to upgrade unless something was seriously wrong, and he was definitely not the type to text me from work about flowers. I typed back, "They're beautiful. Thank you." But something nagged at me for the rest of the afternoon. Something about the way Shane had looked guilty, the way Marcus had fled, the way Elliot had asked what was so funny. Had he heard something? And if he had, what exactly had he heard? I pushed the thought away. Even if he had overheard, it was just harmless flirting, just jokes between coworkers. Elliot knew I loved him. He knew I would never actually do anything to hurt our marriage, didn't he? That evening, I found Elliot in the kitchen, methodically chopping vegetables for dinner. Our 6-year-old daughter Lily was at the counter beside him, carefully sorting cherry tomatoes by size, a task that would have driven me crazy, but that Elliot seemed to find soothing. "Daddy, why are some tomatoes bigger than others?" Lily asked, holding up 2 specimens for comparison. "Different varieties," Elliot explained patiently. "Some plants grow bigger fruit, some grow smaller, but they all taste good." I watched them for a moment from the doorway. This was Elliot's element: quiet domestic moments, patient explanations, the steady rhythm of family life. It was also, if I was being honest, exactly the kind of predictability that had been driving me crazy lately. "How was the rest of your day?" I asked, setting my purse on the counter. "Fine," he said without looking up. "How was yours?" There was something in his tone that made me study his profile. "It was good. Busy. Shane had to fix the printer again. That thing is on its last legs." Elliot's knife paused for just a fraction of a second. "Shane seems to fix a lot of things around your office." "He's IT support. That's literally his job." "Right." Elliot resumed chopping, his movements precise and controlled. "Just seems like he's there a lot." I felt a flicker of irritation. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just an observation." "Mommy, look!" Lily held up a perfectly round cherry tomato. "This one's like a little ball." "Very nice, sweetie," I said, but my attention was still on Elliot. "If you have something to say, just say it." He finally looked at me, and I saw that careful expression again. I don't have anything to say. I was making conversation. But I could tell there was more. There was always more with Elliot. Thoughts and feelings he kept locked away. Things he analyzed and reanalyzed until they became bigger problems than they needed to be. "I invited Tamsin and her boyfriend for dinner Friday," I announced, partly to change the subject and partly to test his reaction. "And maybe Shane too, if he's free. You know, just a casual thing." Elliot's hand stilled completely this time. "Shane? He's new in town, doesn't know many people. I thought it would be nice to include him." "Since when do you invite coworkers to dinner?" "Since when do I need permission to invite friends over?" The kitchen fell silent except for the sound of oil heating in the pan. Even Lily seemed to sense the tension, her small hands pausing in their sorting. "You don't need permission," Elliot said finally. "I just think it's interesting that you want to invite someone you barely know." "I know Shane plenty well. We work together every day. Working with someone and knowing them are 2 different things." I felt my temper rising. This was exactly what I meant about Elliot being controlling. He couldn't just accept that I had friends, that I had a life outside of this house and our routine. "You know what? Never mind. I'll cancel. Wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable in your own home." I didn't say, "You didn't have to say anything. Your tone said it all." Elliot turned off the burner and faced me fully. "Persis, I'm not trying to control who you're friends with. I'm trying to understand what's happening. What's happening is that I'm trying to have a social life, and you're acting like I'm planning to burn the house down. That's not. He glanced at Lily, who was watching us with wide eyes. Can we talk about this later? There's nothing to talk about. Either you trust me or you don't. Of course I trust you. But something in his voice suggested otherwise. Something that made me want to push harder, to prove that I wasn't going to be controlled or monitored or made to feel guilty for having fun. Good, I said. Then dinner Friday shouldn't be a problem. After Lily went to bed, I found Elliot in his home office, laptop open, typing intently. The room was small, cramped with filing cabinets and stacks of papers from his accounting work. He'd always been meticulous about organization, but tonight, everything seemed even more precisely arranged than usual. What are you working on? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Just updating some files, he said without looking up. I moved closer, trying to see the screen, but he minimized the window quickly. Files for what? Work stuff, budget projections. But I caught a glimpse of what looked like a spreadsheet with dates and times before the screen went black. Since when do budget projections need timestamps? Since always. You track when expenses occur, when payments are made. He closed the laptop and turned to face me. It's basic accounting. I studied his face, looking for signs of whatever was really going on. Elliot had never been a good liar, but he was being oddly evasive tonight. Are we okay? I asked finally. Why wouldn't we be okay? You seem different, distant. He was quiet for a long moment, and I could practically see him choosing his words carefully. I love you, Persis. I love our family. I just want to make sure we're protecting what we have. Protecting it from what? From anything that might hurt it. The way he said it made me feel cold suddenly, like he knew something I didn't know he knew, like he was preparing for something I couldn't see coming. Elliot, if this is about the thing at work today. What thing at work? The question was too quick, too sharp. He definitely knew about something. Nothing, just, if you heard something, or if someone said something. What would someone have said? I felt trapped suddenly, like I was confessing to crimes I hadn't committed. Nothing. People joke around, you know? It doesn't mean anything. I know you joke around, he said softly. I've always known that about you. It's one of the things I fell in love with. Then what's the problem? There's no problem. He stood up, kissing my forehead gently. I'm just tired. It's been a long day. But as I watched him walk toward the bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. Something in the way he looked at me, the way he spoke, the way he seemed to be cataloguing every word I said. I told myself I was being paranoid. Elliot wasn't the type to scheme or plot or gather evidence. He was straightforward, honest, sometimes painfully direct. If he had a problem with something, he would just say so. Wouldn't he? Friday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of October night that made you want to sit outside and pretend summer wasn't really over. I'd spent an hour getting ready, choosing a dress that was just fitted enough to be flattering without being obvious. Tamsin arrived first with her boyfriend Derek, a software engineer, who seemed nice enough but never had much to say. Shane showed up 20 minutes later with a bottle of wine and that easy smile that made him instantly likable. He complimented the house, praised the smell of dinner, and charmed Lily by showing her a magic trick with a quarter that made her giggle uncontrollably. You didn't tell me Shane was so good with kids, I murmured to Tamsin while Elliot opened the wine. Girl, you didn't tell me Shane looked like that, she whispered back. No wonder you're always talking about him. I felt a flush of pride, like I'd brought home an impressive trophy. Shane was younger than Elliot, more outgoing, more spontaneous. He filled spaces that Elliot left quiet. Dinner conversation flowed easily. Shane told stories about his previous job in Chicago. Derek discussed the latest tech trends, and Tamsin kept everyone laughing with gossip from her marketing firm. Elliot participated when spoken to, but seemed content to listen, occasionally refilling glasses or clearing plates. "So, Shane," Tamsin said as we moved to the living room for coffee, "what made you leave Chicago? Job opportunity, or were you running from an ex-girlfriend?" Shane laughed. "Definitely the job, though I won't lie, it didn't hurt to get some distance from my previous situation." "Aha, I knew it," Tamsin crowed. "What happened? She cheat on you, you cheat on her. Come on, spill." I saw Elliot's jaw tighten slightly, but Shane seemed unfazed by the personal questions. "Nothing that dramatic. We just wanted different things. She was ready to settle down, get married, have kids. I wasn't there yet." "Smart man," I said, settling onto the couch next to him. "Marriage is, well, it's not for everyone." The words came out more pointed than I'd intended. I felt Elliot's eyes on me from across the room, but I didn't look back. "Present company excluded, of course," Shane said diplomatically. "Of course," I agreed. Though I have to say, if I'd known what I know now— "Persis." Elliot's voice was quiet but firm. "What? I'm just being honest. Marriage is hard work. Sometimes you wonder what it would be like to be with someone more compatible." The room went uncomfortably quiet. Derek suddenly found his coffee cup fascinating. Tamsin's eyes went wide, darting between me and Elliot. "I think," Shane said carefully, "that every relationship has its challenges." "True," I said, emboldened by the wine and the attention. "But some relationships have more challenges than others. Some people are just naturally better at meeting needs." I let my hand brush against Shane's arm as I reached for my wine glass. It was a small gesture, barely noticeable, but I saw Elliot notice it. "Maybe we should change the subject," Derek suggested weakly. "Why?" I asked. "We're all adults here. We can talk about adult things, like how some people are naturally more passionate, more adventurous, more willing to take risks." "Persis," Elliot said again, and this time there was something sharp in his voice. "What, Elliot? Are you going to tell me I can't speak freely in my own home?" "I'm going to ask you to consider what you're saying." "I'm saying that life is short, and people should be with partners who truly appreciate them, who make them feel alive." I was looking directly at Shane now, and I could see the discomfort in his eyes. But I couldn't seem to stop myself. The wine, the attention, the thrill of saying things I'd only thought before, it was intoxicating. "Some people," I continued, "know how to make a woman feel special, know how to satisfy her needs." The silence that followed was deafening. Tamsin looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. Derek was staring at his hands. Shane was carefully not looking at anyone. And Elliot's face had gone completely blank. Not angry, not hurt, just empty. "I think," Shane said, standing up abruptly, "I should probably head home. Early day tomorrow." "Oh, don't go," I protested, but even I could hear how desperate I sounded. "No, really. Thank you for dinner. It was enlightening." He gathered his jacket quickly, said polite goodbyes, and was out the door before anyone could stop him. Derek mumbled something about an early morning and dragged Tamsin toward the exit, though she kept looking back at me with a mixture of concern and horror. "Call me tomorrow," she whispered as they left. And then it was just me and Elliot, standing in our living room surrounded by empty wine glasses and the wreckage of what had been a pleasant evening. "Well," I said, trying to inject some lightness into my voice. "That was fun." Elliot began collecting glasses without a word. "Oh, come on, don't be like this. I was just having a conversation." "That wasn't a conversation," he said quietly. "That was a performance." "A performance? I was being myself." "No," he said, still not looking at me. "You were being cruel." The word hit me like a slap. "Cruel? How was I being cruel?" "You humiliated me in front of our friends. You flirted with another man at our dinner table. You basically announced to everyone that you're unsatisfied with our marriage." "I did not." "Yes, you did." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my stomach drop. You did all of that, and now you're going to pretend it didn't happen. I felt tears prick my eyes, though I wasn't sure if they were from guilt or anger. I had a little too much wine. I said some things I probably shouldn't have said, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. Am I? Yes. God, Elliot, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You take everything so seriously. You can't just let people have fun. He stared at me for a long moment, then resumed collecting glasses. You're right, he said finally. I do take things seriously. I take our marriage seriously. I take our family seriously. I take the promises we made to each other seriously. So do I. Do you? The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to answer immediately, to reassure him, to make this whole awful conversation go away. But something stopped me. Some part of me that was tired of reassuring, tired of making promises I wasn't sure I wanted to keep. I'm going to bed, I said instead. Good idea. But as I walked toward the bedroom, I heard him in the kitchen, running water, cleaning up the mess from our ruined dinner party, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was cleaning up more than just dishes, that he was cleaning up the last remnants of whatever trust we'd had left. Monday morning hit me like a hangover, even though I'd barely slept enough to dream. The weekend had passed in tense silence, with Elliot polite but distant, and me oscillating between defiance and regret. I'd tried to bring up Friday night once, but he'd simply said, I think we both said enough, and walked away. The office felt different somehow as I settled at my desk. Maybe it was my imagination, but conversation seemed to stop when I walked by, and I caught a few sideways glances that made my skin crawl. Rough weekend? Tamsin appeared at my cubicle with coffee and a concerned expression. You could say that, I muttered, not looking up from my computer. Want to talk about it? Not here. She glanced around, then leaned closer. Persis, what the hell happened Friday night? I mean, I know you've been frustrated with Elliot, but that was what? Harsh, really harsh. Shane looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. I felt a stab of embarrassment, but pushed it down. I was just being honest about my feelings. Is that a crime now? Honest? You basically told your husband he was inadequate in bed while flirting with another man, in front of witnesses. I did not. Yes, you did. And now Shane's been avoiding eye contact with me all morning. Derek thinks you're having some kind of breakdown, and I'm worried about you. Before I could respond, my computer chimed with an email from HR. The subject line made my blood run cold. Mandatory meeting, 10 a.m. Shit, I whispered. What? I showed her the screen. Tamsin's face went pale. That can't be about Friday, can it? That was at your house, not work. But even as she said it, we both knew that lines between work and personal life had been blurring for weeks. The flirting, the jokes, the increasingly inappropriate comments. All of it had happened here, in this office, where people were paid to maintain professional standards. At exactly 10 a.m., I knocked on Janet Morrison's door. Our HR director was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd seen every workplace drama imaginable. She gestured for me to sit without smiling. Persis, thank you for coming. I'll get straight to the point. We've received some complaints about inappropriate workplace behavior, and I need to discuss them with you. My mouth went dry. What kind of complaints? Janet consulted a folder on her desk. Sexual harassment, creating a hostile work environment, unprofessional conduct. That's ridiculous. I haven't harassed anyone. The complaints suggest a pattern of inappropriate comments about your personal life, specifically your marriage and intimate relationships. There are also allegations of deliberate attempts to make male coworkers uncomfortable with sexual innuendo. I felt like the room was spinning. Who complained? I have a right to know who's accusing me. The complaints were filed anonymously, which is allowed under company policy, but I can tell you they came from multiple sources and include specific dates and quotes. She opened the folder and began reading. My own words, thrown back at me in Janet's dry, professional tone, sounded horrible, crude, Completely inappropriate. This can't be right, I said weakly. These are taken out of context. What context would make it appropriate to discuss your sex life in the workplace? Or to make suggestive comments about a coworker's physical attributes? We were just joking around. Sexual harassment is not a joke, Persis, and it doesn't matter if you intended it as humor. What matters is that you created an environment where people felt uncomfortable. I thought about Shane's increasingly awkward responses to my comments, the way Marcus had started avoiding the break room when I was there, how even Derek had looked uncomfortable Friday night. What happens now? I asked. You're being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. You'll need to clean out your desk and surrender your access cards. If the investigation confirms these allegations, termination is likely. The words hit me like physical blows. Administrative leave, investigation, termination. This is insane, I said, standing up abruptly. I'm being punished for having a personality, for being friendly with my coworkers. You're being investigated for creating a hostile work environment, Janet corrected. And I strongly suggest you use this time to reflect on the difference between being friendly and being inappropriate. The walk back to my desk felt endless. Everyone was staring now, no longer bothering to hide their curiosity. I could hear whispers following me, speculation about what I'd done, what was happening. Tamsin was waiting by my cubicle, her face stricken. What did they say? Administrative leave, I said numbly, beginning to pull personal items from my drawers. Oh my God. Persis, I'm so sorry. Are you? I looked at her directly. Because someone filed complaints about me, multiple people, and I'm wondering who my real friends are. You don't think I don't know what to think anymore. I grabbed my purse and the small box of personal items, ignoring Tamsin's attempts to continue the conversation. As I walked toward the exit, I saw Shane at his desk, carefully not looking in my direction. The coward couldn't even meet my eyes. In the parking garage, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. My job, the job I'd worked at for 5 years, the job that gave me independence and identity beyond being Elliot's wife and Lily's mother, was gone. Just like that. I pulled out my phone to call Elliot, then stopped. What would I say? That my inappropriate behavior had finally caught up with me. That the jokes he'd been uncomfortable with had cost me my career. Instead, I drove home to our empty house and sat in the kitchen, where Friday night's disaster had unfolded. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the hum of appliances and the distant sound of traffic. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. How was your day, honey? I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Fine, just fine. But nothing was fine. My job was gone. My marriage was hanging by a thread. And I was starting to realize that the person I'd been blaming for all my problems, Elliot, with his careful nature and serious demeanor, might have been the only one trying to protect what we'd built together. The question was, had I destroyed it beyond repair? I didn't tell Elliot about the job immediately. I couldn't find the words, couldn't figure out how to explain that my life was unraveling because of choices I'd convinced myself were harmless. Instead, I spent Tuesday pretending to go to work, sitting in coffee shops and scrolling through job listings on my phone, coming home at the usual time with fabricated stories about meetings and deadlines. But Wednesday morning, everything changed. I woke up to find Elliot's side of the bed empty and cold. The house was too quiet. No shower running, no coffee brewing, no sounds of him getting ready for work. I padded downstairs in my robe and found a note on the kitchen counter, written in Elliot's careful handwriting. Persis, Lily and I are staying at my mother's for a few days. I think we both need some space to figure things out. The joint account has been temporarily frozen, pending some financial planning. Please don't contact us until you're ready to have an honest conversation about what's been happening. I read the note 3 times before the words sank in. He'd taken Lily. He'd frozen our accounts. He'd left me. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and called him. It went straight to voicemail. Elliot, what the hell is this? You can't just take our daughter and disappear. Call me back right now. I tried the house phone at his mother's place. Ruth Vane answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and unwelcoming. Hello, Persis. Ruth, put Elliot on the phone. He doesn't want to talk to you right now. I don't care what he wants. He's my husband and Lily is my daughter. You can't just... I can't just what? Provide a safe place for my son and granddaughter when their wife and mother is having some kind of breakdown. The words hit me like a slap. Breakdown? What are you talking about? Elliot told me about Friday night, about the things you said, the way you behaved. Frankly, I'm not surprised it's come to this. Come to what? Ruth, what's going on? I think you know exactly what's going on, and I think it's about time you face the consequences of your actions. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone and trying to process what was happening. This wasn't like Elliot. He didn't make dramatic gestures or issue ultimatums. He talked things through, sometimes to death. He was reasonable, predictable, safe. But apparently, I'd pushed him past the point of reasonable. I tried calling Tamsin, but she didn't pick up. I tried my mother, but got voicemail. By noon, I was desperate enough to drive to Ruth's house, a tidy colonial in the suburbs where Elliot had grown up. Marla's car was in the driveway alongside Elliot's. I should have known his sister would be there, rallying the family troops against me. Ruth answered the door before I could knock, as if she'd been watching for me. He doesn't want to see you, she said without preamble. Too bad. We're married. We have a child together. He can't just run away because we had a fight. A fight? Ruth's eyebrows rose. Is that what you call publicly humiliating your husband and flirting with another man in front of your friends? Who told you that? Elliot did, along with a lot of other things that frankly make me wonder what my son ever saw in you. I pushed past her into the living room, where Elliot sat on the couch next to Marla. He looked tired, older somehow, but his expression was calm and resolved. Where's Lily? I demanded. Upstairs playing, Marla answered. And she's going to stay upstairs until you lower your voice and start acting like an adult. Don't you dare tell me how to act. This is between me and my husband. Actually, Elliot said quietly, it's between you and the family you've been systematically destroying for months. I stared at him. Destroying? Elliot, what are you talking about? We had a dinner party that got a little awkward. That's not destroying anything. A little awkward? Marla laughed harshly. You basically announced that you're cheating on him. I am not cheating on anyone. Then what do you call what's been happening with Shane? Elliot asked. The question hung in the air. I felt trapped, cornered by people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Shane is a friend, a coworker. We joke around sometimes, but that's all. Show her, Marla said to Elliot. Elliot reached for a manila envelope on the coffee table. My stomach dropped as he pulled out what looked like printed emails and text messages. These are from your work account, he said calmly. And your personal phone. Messages between you and Shane going back 6 weeks. I felt the blood drain from my face. How did you... You left your laptop open, your phone unlocked. You weren't exactly careful about hiding anything. He began reading from the printouts. And I heard my own words, flirtatious, suggestive, increasingly intimate, thrown back at me in his steady, controlled voice. Messages I'd forgotten about, conversations that had seemed harmless in the moment but sounded damning when read aloud. This isn't what it looks like, I said weakly. What does it look like? Ruth asked. It looks like emotional infidelity, Marla said bluntly. It looks like a woman who's checked out of her marriage and is shopping for a replacement. That's not... I would never... You already have, Elliot said. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. You've been gone for months, Persis. And I've been trying to hold our family together while you figured out whether you wanted to be part of it. I felt tears starting, hot and angry. So this is it? You're just giving up? You're not even going to fight for us? I did fight for us. I brought you flowers at work. I tried to talk to you about what was happening. I planned romantic dinners. I suggested counseling. I bent over backward, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. "You didn't do anything wrong," I whispered. "I know that now. This isn't about me, Persis. This is about you deciding that our life together isn't enough anymore." "I never said that." "You didn't have to say it. You showed it every day. In the way you talked about me to your friends, the way you flirted with other men, the way you made it clear that I was boring and predictable and not worth your time." The words were like knives, each one finding its mark because they were true. I had said those things, felt those things, made him feel small and inadequate because it made me feel powerful and desired. "I want to see Lily," I said finally. "Not today," Ruth said firmly. "She's my daughter." "She's a confused little girl who doesn't understand why Mommy and Daddy are fighting," Marla shot back. "And until you figure out what you want, your family or your fantasy, she's better off here." I looked at Elliot, searching his face for some sign of the man who'd brought me flowers just a week ago, but his expression was unreadable, protected by walls I'd apparently driven him to build. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want you to decide," he said simply. "Do you want to be married to me, or do you want to keep pretending that you're single? Because you can't have both." "That's not fair." "No," he agreed. "It's not fair. None of this is fair. But it's where we are." A courier knocked on the door just then, and Ruth went to answer it. She came back with a thick envelope addressed to me. "What is this?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. "Legal separation papers," Elliot said, "and a custody proposal that gives me primary residence of Lily." I tore open the envelope with shaking hands. The documents were official, detailed, devastating. Financial arrangements, visitation schedules, division of assets, all laid out in cold legal language that made our marriage sound like a failed business partnership. "You can't do this," I whispered. "I can," he said, "and I am, unless you're willing to do the hard work of rebuilding what we had." "What kind of work?" "Counseling, complete honesty about what happened with Shane, no contact with him outside of necessary work interactions, and a real commitment to our marriage, not just the parts of it that are convenient for you." I stared at the papers, at the signatures and legal stamps that could end everything I'd built with this man. Part of me wanted to fight, to argue, to find some way to make this all his fault. But another part of me, a small, honest part I'd been ignoring for months, knew that I'd brought this on myself. The question was, what was I willing to do to fix it? I spent 3 days staring at those legal documents, reading and rereading the terms that would dissolve my marriage and limit my access to my own daughter. The papers sat on my kitchen table like an accusation, impossible to ignore. On Saturday morning, I called the lawyer whose card was attached to the separation agreement. Margaret Chen had a small practice in downtown, specializing in family law. Her office was cramped but tidy, filled with law books and family photos that seemed to mock my own fractured situation. "Mrs. Vane," she said as I settled into the chair across from her desk, "I understand you've received the separation documents my colleague prepared for your husband." "I want to contest them," I said immediately. "The custody arrangement is completely unfair. Lily belongs with her mother." Margaret consulted the file in front of her. "Based on the evidence presented, your husband has a strong case for primary custody. There are documented instances of inappropriate behavior, job loss due to workplace misconduct, and what appears to be emotional infidelity. Those are all exaggerations. My husband is trying to punish me for having friends." "Is that what you call it?" She pulled out a thick folder. "Because I have copies of text messages, email communications, witness statements from your workplace, and documentation of the incident that led to your termination." My heart sank as she spread the papers across her desk. It was all there, every flirtatious text, every inappropriate joke, every moment I'd thought was harmless and private. Seeing it laid out like evidence in a criminal trial made me realize how damning it all looked. "How did he get all of this?" "Your husband is an accountant, Mrs. Vane. He's trained to document financial irregularities and gather evidence. It appears he applied those same skills to documenting the breakdown of your marriage. I thought about all those nights I'd found him working late on his laptop, all the times he'd seemed distant and preoccupied. He hadn't been withdrawing from our marriage, he'd been building a case against me. "This is entrapment," I said desperately. "He was spying on me." "He was protecting himself legally, and given what happened at your workplace, it was probably wise. Your employer has already indicated they'll provide testimony about your conduct if this goes to court." The room felt like it was closing in on me. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you fight this separation, you'll likely lose. Your husband has been methodical in documenting a pattern of behavior that family court judges find very concerning. The best outcome you can hope for is supervised visitation and spousal support for a limited time." "Supervised visitation? She's my daughter." "She's a 6-year-old child whose mother lost her job for sexual harassment and has been conducting an emotional affair with a coworker. From the court's perspective, your husband represents stability and appropriate judgment." I felt tears starting, but they were angry tears, frustrated tears. "This is insane. I made some mistakes, but I'm not an unfit mother." "Perhaps not, but you made choices that prioritized your own desires over your family's well-being, and those choices have consequences." Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying me with the neutral expression lawyers perfect. "There is one option that might preserve some of what you want." "What?" "Your husband's lawyer mentioned that he'd be willing to consider reconciliation under specific conditions. Counseling, complete transparency about the affair, and a commitment to rebuilding the marriage." "I told you there was no affair. Mrs. Vane, I'm going to be very direct with you. You can keep denying what happened, and you can fight these papers in court. But you'll lose. You'll spend thousands of dollars you don't have, and you'll end up with even less access to your daughter." She gathered the papers into a neat stack. "Or you can acknowledge that your marriage is worth saving and do the work required to save it. And if I don't want to save it, then you sign the papers, accept the terms, and start over. But you do it knowing that you chose your pride over your family." Driving home from Margaret's office, I passed every place that used to mean something. My old job, the restaurant where Elliot and I had our first date, the park where we took Lily as a toddler, and all I could see were the moments I decided what I had wasn't enough. At my kitchen table, with separation papers in front of me, and my mother insisting we'd fight this, I finally admitted the truth. This wasn't bullying, it was consequences. Between signing the papers and calling Elliot, I chose the harder thing. I called. I said I wanted counseling, work, honesty. He warned me there would be no more chances. I said I understood. 6 months later, in Dr. Sarah Kim's office, I barely recognized the woman I'd been. Elliot and I had clawed our way back through brutal honesty, hard boundaries, and small, fragile steps toward trust. I'd found a new job, Shane was out of my life, and I finally understood the affair had never been about him. It was about me running from myself. Elliot admitted he'd tried to be perfect instead of real, carrying the relationship alone while I checked out. Walking out of our final session, Elliot stopped, pulled out a small box, and opened it to reveal a new ring. Symbol, not of going back, but of starting over. He said he didn't want to renew old vows. He wanted new, honest ones. "Will you marry me again? Will you choose this life, this ordinary, extraordinary love?" Looking at him, at the man who had seen the worst of me, and still stood there asking me to choose us, I finally knew my answer. I said yes. I chose him, our family, and the quiet miracle of being truly seen and still loved. For the first time in years, it felt not just enough, but everything.